The first step to a new you for 2015 is having a creepy skin mask of your face. Am I right or am I right? Let's get to it. I start by laying down aluminum foil where I'll be working. I'm using what's called a lifecast of my actual face to make my mask, but this is not the only way it can be done, and I'll get to the others in a second. Ice cream is an optional but highly recommended step. If you are using a plaster lifecast, be sure to apply a release agent first so that your mask won't tear when you're removing it. I'm using an epoxy par film mold release spray, but there's a ton of other release agents you can buy online. You may be able to use a really thin coat of Vaseline or vegetable oil or even lube if you're in a bind, absolutely no pun intended, but don't quote me on that because I've only heard it suggested and I haven't tested it out myself, okay? Then taking wedge sponges and liquid latex, I am covering the entire face with a thin coat. While I'm doing that, now's a good time to tell you about your other options. Lifecasts are fun to do and really useful for making custom prosthetics, but they're messy, expensive, time-consuming, and you can't make one by yourself. Unless maybe you have some super cray powers, but it is the best way to make a mask that resembles you and is therefore maxed out on the creepy factor. For those wanting to make one, I'll leave a few links in the description box of good tutorials to guide you through the process. But if you can't or you just don't want to do all that to make a creepy-ass skin mask, you can sculpt face from scratch, or use mannequin heads. You can find those at most craft stores made out of plastic for around 12 ducks or styrofoam like this one for about $5 hairs. If you get the plastic one, you shouldn't need to coat it in a release agent at all. Just make sure that if you go the styrofoam route, you coat it lightly in Vaseline before applying the latex, or it won't come off easily if at all. You can't use mold release on styrofoam either because it'll melt away and get all holy looking and gross and send you into a trypophobic episode, and I know this one firsthand, so don't do it. Anyway. I am also extending the latex down past the end of my lifecast onto the aluminum foil, that's why we put it down, so that I have some room to play with the mask. You don't have to do this depending on what you'll be using the mask for, but I knew my neck would be in the final picture of the makeup and I didn't want the bottom of the mask to be seen. Go ham with a hairdryer to speed up the drying process. You'll know the first layer is dry when it's mostly transparent like this. Repeat the layering and drying process. I did this 4 times and I wouldn't recommend any less than that because if it's too thin, it'll be more likely to tear when removing it or applying it. You could do more than 4 layers, but making it too thick will eliminate a lot of the shape detail in the face. Once that's done and dry, do makeup on the face similar to how you do your everyday makeup, starting with using your foundation color. If you're not using a lifecast, this is an especially good way to sell the effect because it could still look a lot like you if its eyebrows are filled in or its lips are lined the way that you usually do it. Don't forget falsies. Then you're ready to remove it. Go slow and be very careful not to tear it. For this particular case, I found that removing all the outside edges first was the best way to go. You don't want to pull it from the top down like a sheet, and the central features of the face should be the last thing you pull up. If you find you're having trouble pulling it back, like it might be tearing, try taking a small brush with a little bit of translucent powder on it and wiggling it gently under the mask as you pull up. That's a pretty darn good looking skin mask if I do say so myself. It rubs the lotion on its skin. It does this whenever it's tired. Much like my DIY heart and tongue prosthetics, this is, if nothing else, a great way to prank someone. I personally like tacking it onto a wall and waiting for someone to walk by and notice it, but you know, that's just me. Be sure to check out the second part of this tutorial where I use my skin mask in conjunction with a snake look to be all symbolic and crap of shedding my skin for the new year. It gets real creepy and you don't want to miss it. Love you, zombies!